Good morning to another episode of Crypto Posse on the Crypto Planetarium. You know, we've been talking a lot about these tariff situation the last few weeks, and let's talk today about how that's been affecting the market. First of all, let me say good morning to the Posse.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Awesome, man. So let's just jump in. Mike, I don't know what do you think about what's going on with the market as we speak here, the day after Easter?
Well, today we see Bitcoin breaking out of its consolidation channel at around 87K, and we're currently around sitting at about 88.1. I touched 88.5 today. But as you mentioned, the tariffs have put sell pressure on all the markets, the crypto market, the bond market, stock market. And Bitcoin finding a low of about 74,000 April 9th. Over the last 3 weeks, it's built momentum and was trading in around the 80, 81, 83 range. Kind of stuck in this consolidation channel or trading sideways. And we've seen a lot more volume starting to come into the market. Like I said, Bitcoin's now trading at about 88, so it's showing bullish momentum, and it looks like we're back on track for some gains here after hitting those lulls. It's about 20% off of its all-time high, or right about 19% off of its all-time high. So I think you see volume increasing. Yesterday volume was up about 42%. And I believe that's because people and traders are trying to find, somewhere to put their money because they're pulling out of the stock market. The bond market's not looking very good. So, I think Bitcoin is proving that it's a store of value just as gold is.
Well, doesn't that sound exciting for the whole crypto situation? Because at the end of the day, what Bitcoin is doing, I think we all know that's kind of like the gold of cryptocurrencies, right? So what was it like? What was the low? It was around 74 recently. You recall that date? Was that like April 9th or something like that?
Yeah, that was April 9th. Yeah.
Okay. April 9th, Bitcoin was at 74,000. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Ish, right in there. And this morning, you're saying it's up in around 88,000. Is that also correct?
Yeah, I touched 88.5, and I looked at it a few minutes ago and it was right around 88. So it's pulling back a little bit, but I really think that we're going to see more momentum going forward. As it starts to touch these levels, I think you're going to see more traders jumping in, and you'll see those FOMO traders coming in. And yeah, I think we've definitely going to get some momentum going forward with Bitcoin. And with Bitcoin, all the other coins follow. Solana's been performing really well. I think Solana has had the most gains coming off its low of about 95, which was really crazy to see it at that level because just a couple months ago it was trading in at the as high as $284. So you wonder when you see it at that level, is it going to keep dipping, or is it going to grab support and run? And it's pretty amazing what it's done over the last couple of weeks.
Is that Solano or Solana? I always
Solana.
Solana
Solana.
with a
I'm glad I'm trying to, because that's always been something for me to go, because we have Solana Beach, okay, and it's like
That's
we go
interesting
surfing
enough,
Solana Beach.
KB. I was, or Joseph, I should say. That's where the coin was created, Solana Beach. The guys are from Solana Beach, so it's interesting that they named
Wow,
it Solana. Yeah.
that's so. With all of that, your personal trading style in the midst of a market like this right now, do you have any feedback you could give our listeners about, Mike, about what you're doing with, or what you would strategize with what's currently happening?
I've been just scalping, which is trading within an intraday trading range. So trying to trade a specific coin. I've been trading XRP and SUI. and just trying to get in at that intraday low and selling at an intraday high. So, maybe you're only capitalizing on, 7, 8 cents or, up to like 10, 12 cents as far as a move on a coin. But if you have enough capital in it, you're able to, eke out a gain. So I've been, trading mainly SUI lately, and I've been doing okay with that. But I'm injecting like 10 to $15,000 in. So if you're, it probably wouldn't work for anybody that's just going to put in $500 or $1,000, and it's because there's not enough, gain potential there to cover the trade. So you've got to, it's obviously fairly risky. You're always setting up a stop loss, so at worst you'd lose just a couple $100 or something. But yeah, it's been working pretty well.
Okay. What about this one you were saying? Was it Solana that you just said went from uh 80 something to 2 something or something like that?
Solana, after all this sell pressure due to the tariffs, it was trading at around 94 and 95. Right now, I haven't looked at it this morning, but it was about 139 yesterday. If I had to guess, it's probably about 142 or 143 today. But what I was talking about, the 284 was an all-time high that was just a couple months ago. And that was actually, I think, on inauguration day when the the Trump meme coin and the those meme coins were launched. They were launched on Solana, and Solana just shot right up. I think President Trump had a tweet where he said something about Solana. He mentioned Solana, and Solana just skyrocketed from about God, I want to say about 189 or around the 200 range up to 284, but don't quote me on that. I know it ran up over the next couple of days significantly, and then it has sold off since, obviously.
But I mean, the amount of gains that is, if you thought about that in terms of like uh, Bitcoin, whoa, that would be like if, because that's like almost 50% of its original numbers, even 40%. If something like Bitcoin did that, that would be like going from 80,000 to, you know, whew, all of a sudden that would be I'm just saying percentage wise, that's a pretty big gain.
The Solana chain had about 80% of all the meme coins that were so hot for a while. Now that those have all kind of fizzled out and dropped, anywhere from 60, 70, 80, 90%, that's part of the reason why Solana is so low.
Do you see that as an opportunity? Do you believe Solana is going to become, you know, very bullish and then, that's an opportunity?
I do. I do. I like Solana. Solana was the first one before, when Bitcoin and everything was still low, nothing ran. Solana went about 8 times, 8 to 10 times, back last year, 2 years ago. Because when I had it, I bought it at 25 and I kind of foolishly sold it at 47, thinking it was just taking a while. And then all of a sudden, it just kept moving up. And I'm thinking, wow, it's got to stop. Well, it never did. And it hit in the over 200 range, uh, shortly after over a few months period of time.
So you put in originally around 45. Is that what you're saying?
25. I bought it at 25. It was hanging around 25. It actually dipped to 13 at one point. I think it had a breach of the blockchain, something like that. And it stuck back at 25 for a long period of time. And then it just took off after that. But that was way before any of this bullish momentum we've had with everything else.
When was that? If you were to try to dial that in on a time, when was that? 6 months, a year?
Year and a half.
If you'd have bought Solana at that a year ago, year and a half ago, and just, went on a surf trip, okay? Or, went up to the mountains, okay? You come back, you'd be like 8 times your money.
Correct. And even if you held it now, some people, might take out where they think it's high, buy back in. We don't know. But even if you're holding now, you're still going to be almost 4 times your money where we are today at an extremely low
What is
point.
it today?
It's probably in the 140 range, I think.
That's six
So
times.
six
If it was
times, six
six
times.
times. So if you put in, just let me help. Let me just, talk to the actual numbers. If you put in, 10 grand a year and a half ago, currently you'd be sitting at over 60.
Yes, and that's why you want to play the long game. There's this saying in investing: when in doubt, zoom out, because it's too easy to. And I see these unexperienced investors, and I relate. I was there too, but I chose to invest in myself, educate myself, and zoom out, because what you see on the 4 hour time frame when looking at a chart is completely different when you're looking at a daily or a weekly time frame. And as Jeff is mentioning, I always had this joke about, you guys say take these trips and go surfing, or, go live your life. To me, I used to say, and it's almost like, and it might sound a little dark, but I wish I was in a coma, right? You buy into Solana, I think this was around 2022. Something happens, you're in this coma, you wake up out of your coma and you 10x your money.
Yeah. 2025 and it's a 10x, boy. Yeah.
That breaks out all human error of making the wrong trade.
It really becomes a discussion about not I don't want to say short versus long, because it's not really about short versus long. It's just like short in its totality, long in its totality, because I think a lot of times the discussion ends up being short versus long, and that's not. I don't think there's really a discussion about that. I think there's a strategy that includes short to a percentage and then includes long to a percentage, and then it holds some back to just infuse in at that powerful moment when all of a sudden you see great opportunity, buying into the fear, as you like to say, Will. So, yeah, I don't know. For me, long always just seems, I don't know, it's like real estate. You just see this opportunity that just avails itself where nothing's for sure, right? Everything's a risk. You're basically still at the horse track, I mean, you're still at the card table. It's still relatively gambling. I mean, it's definitely not just putting money in an IRA account, but for those that are willing to kind of have that excitement and that hope, and yes, try to educate yourself and make some moves. I mean, there's just something about going long to me that seems really exciting. I mean, if you look at everything we've talked about today, where Bitcoin was originally, I think it was said about 2012. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
13 years ago, it was $5.
And that's why you want to zoom out.
God.
Imagine 2012, you're buying into this asset, right? And it's new. And in 2012, when you're buying into Bitcoin, people are calling you like, man, you're so stupid, and putting you down. And so, but it's really easy to fear the unknown, right? But if you go into 2018, and this is a really cool data point, because and happy Easter to everybody, by the way. What a good mile marker to use Easter, and to say back in 2012 during Easter, Bitcoin was at $5. If you fast forward to 2018 and you have that vision, which to me, yes, I agree, you can't, and it's not wise to compare short versus long, because as you said, Joseph, they're two completely different strategies. But following the long game, going into 2018, Bitcoin is now sitting at $6,850 from your original $5 buy-in in 2012.
Oh my gosh. Imagine that same 10,000 that I was talking about. because my big question a lot of times is the $100,000 mark, and that'll be something we talk more about and get into in the near future. Not necessarily on this episode, but that's going to be something we do. Okay, but let's just talk about 10,000. You put 10,000 at $5 on Bitcoin. Out of the whoa, and then what does that turn into 6 years later? I mean, it's scary to do the math on that, but whatever it is, it's cha-ching. The cashish. It's a perpetual surf trip. It's a round trip to Tahiti, Indo, and everywhere. Caribbean. Where do you want to go, player? I mean, that's really exciting stuff. I mean, that's what I think drives the whole thing in the first place, is people hearing stories like that. Am I wrong?
Let's jump into the current time that we're in. We're in 2025. I just brought up 2018. So in 2025, what was the price of Bitcoin during Easter? And now we can reference about 84,500. And then you touch on the fact that Mike was bringing up, that we're touching about 87K. So, and this is, and I would seriously write this down for anybody.
Well, I'm grabbing my pen right now, mister.
Anybody new to investing, right? And it really is that DCA strategy for the long term. Because imagine you bought at $5, you bought at $6,850, and now we're sitting at 84,005. So what that translates to is this. If you were to sit down to me and I'm working with you one-on-one, and we're asking these questions like, are we buying at a premium? Are we buying at a discount? That kind of goes out the door. And I've seen this actually work. And this is why I'm saying write this down. If you set up a budget and you said, okay, every week, and this is what's cool, you can actually set up this as reoccurring buys, something you don't have to think about, but you say, all right, I'm going to set up a reoccurring buy weekly. So every single week, specifically, I'm buying $10 of Bitcoin. But you're doing that week in, week out. What would that look like if you implemented that strategy from 2012 to 2025? You'd be going to Tahiti on a private jet. You'd be taking care of your tribe. I would hope that you would be looking out for your tribe and taking care of, your friends and your family, because you would have so much money at that point. I mean, I know exactly what I would do, but what would you do if you were sitting on lump sums of tens of millions of dollars and all you did was set up a reoccurring buy that you didn't have to think about? And even for somebody that's educated and technical like myself, there's a probability somewhere out there that you even outperformed me. And you did it without even thinking. All you did was you set up your strategy. You set up these reoccurring buys. I have friends that do this.
Okay.
Just let it go.
And you never sell? Like, all it is a weekly buy, but you're just acquiring. You're constantly acquiring. And years later, okay, so let's, you're just, private jets and all that, if that's what you want. Me, I just want a big piece of land that's somewhere off the grid and just live, I want what I want. But I mean, a private jet to get to that would be cool. I don't know that it's ever been my personal dream, but I dream about, everyone who knows me knows I've always dreamed about having a big piece of, or as big as possible piece of land that I could really develop into something that would be self-sustaining, off the grid, hopefully real close to the beach and good waves, in a great environment with lots of peace around me. So, that's almost more of a fantasy than a reality, but I believe it's a possible reality, and that with the right strategy, crypto can be part of creating those dreams.
I think one of the many reasons why the Crypto Posse is becoming such a close-knit family is I really align with what you said. I'm using private jets because we're talking about like the FU money. You're buying at $5 and it's at 84,000. You're probably sitting on closer to 100 million. And that's why I use that example. But really what aligns with who I am, it's the same thing, man. Like, I want that private property. I want it to be permaculture, self-sustaining. I want to really remove myself from what people call the matrix. I don't want to go grocery shopping in a grocery store. I want to go out and pick fruit that's alive from a tree, alive. And this is why too, you can make all the money that you want, but what I perceive as real true wealth, it's your health. Because imagine making all this money and you're just living this gluttonous life and the private jets and the materialistic things, and you're just putting all this stuff in. How long are you going to last? Are you going to be able to really enjoy your money?
Well, that's what would bring me to this subject is, when we're talking about our health, I think we've all come upon the data that shows the worst thing for you is stress. So that's why I like the idea of going long. I'm kind of a high-strung individual as it is. And for me, all this day trading, it stresses me out. I don't even do it, and it stresses me out, okay? I see the people who do it, I get short. You make money today. Why? The money you're talking about is they're making money years later, right? So with long, it's, I want to make money, big money later on. But with short, it's like, but I want to pay my bills this week. I want to make money this week. I want to capitalize on the now trends. I want to sell. I want to buy today and sell today. Or tomorrow. Or I just want to be in. I just feel like that's really stressful. I think you got to love it to a point where you do that. That's something you just have to do because you just need to do it. You're like that guy that just has to sit at the roulette table. You're drawn to it magnetically. I'm personally not. I'd rather create entertainment. That's my personal, I am about health and fitness. I am about entertainment. I am about a lot of things, but it's stressful. The short to me is like, you get at the end of the day, you might make money, but what did you pay in the long run? So that's why, I always look at like, well, really? You could have bought it for this and just do what you're going to do outside of this and then make that kind of money later. With that said, is there projections? I know we've all probably heard about all this or whatever, but I heard recently, I don't know who it was. Was it Michael Saylor, one of these guys? I don't know. Is that his name?
Yes.
Didn't he say someone said something about their belief that crypto one day will be worth like some ungodly number, but 13 million or something?
Yeah.
13 million. Well, that's similar to if you bought today at under 100,000, even if it approaches 10, whatever, any of that, we'd look back and go, oh my God, the biggest shoulda, coulda, woulda in the history of shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Okay. But I mean, the $5 in 2012 to the 6,000 in 2018 to the 88,000 of today, does that suggest in hindsight or in looking at history to go, well, I'm just going to sack up on Bitcoin and just believe in that instead of hearing about it? I'm going to believe in it and sack up on it. And whatever, it could be Solana, it could be XRP, it could be, all the big, the 4 or 5 big ones, chunk up at the low point and chill.
Part of Michael Saylor's belief is that year over year, Bitcoin goes up 40%. And so it's a hedge against inflation. If you have your money sitting in the bank and, you're losing 12 to 15% of the value every year, I think that's why he looks, at Bitcoin as that store of value, and that he's covering the inflationary aspect of I don't know the wording. I'm having a brain fart here about the
What about too, if you compare it to gold? We know how much Bitcoin's left, so supply and demand, right? Do we know how much gold is left? Like, they can keep digging it up. So that's where it gets interesting when where how much Bitcoin's left. That gets into supply and demand. Where gold, if they keep mining gold, I mean, does that stop the price from going up at a certain point?
Yeah, I mean, if you talk about supply and demand, and that Bitcoin is a finite resource, is right? So with that finite resource aspect, there's only so much left. So with all this excitement about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin as the gold standard of cryptocurrency, I mean, you'd have to be basically, I don't know, super not smart to be nice, to not believe that, you know, another 5 or 10 years with all the factors we're talking about, that if you were to come in today and buy one Bitcoin for 88,000, if you took 88,000 of your dollars and said, you know what, I'm jumping in, I want to buy a Bitcoin. That if you said, yeah, I also want to sit on it because I don't care. I'm just going to sit on it. I'm not going to worry about what it's doing every other day. I'm just going to know that I bought it for years. I'll check into it once in a while, that you'd probably be doing pretty well. If it went to 1 million, not 13 million, if it just went to 1 million, do we see a day amongst us as the posse, not trying to give any advice in any level, just curious between ourselves, even though it's not between ourselves because we're on the show, is do we see a day where it's going to be 1 million? I mean, I'm not Michael Saylor, and I'm pretty sure you guys aren't too, but I would ask this to the posse. Do you see Bitcoin being $1 million in our lifetime?
I would love to touch on that and give you reasons why. I mean, we've kind of already laid that foundation, right? We're talking about, you know, back in 2012, it's a new asset class. Fast forward to today, look at the adoption, right? Take a step back. When you look at Bitcoin, it has so many use cases, because in today's day and age, with the adoption that's happening, I don't have to sell my Bitcoin for US dollars that are being devalued to go buy a house. In 2025, I can take my Bitcoin, I could delete that whole step, and I can just go find that right buyer that's going to say, because there's a lot of smart people out there that know this. You come to me and I'm into real estate and you're telling me you want to use your Bitcoin to buy my house? Yes, every single time, because we're playing the long game. And when you look at it like this, okay, I could sell this house for about 500 grand, $600,000, right? And I can get those dollars that are being basically printed into oblivion, which is lowering the buying power. And then I take my 400 or 500 grand. I'm happy. You know, a whole other conversation. If you go buy another house today, you're going to pay a lot more in property taxes. But here's the reality. I can now sell that same house, and you can give me $400,000 to $500,000 in Bitcoin, and then I hold that. And then you fast forward to the question you're asking. Yeah, I do truly believe. I don't want to put a timeline or a time frame on it because I don't know.
Yeah, no one has a crystal ball.
I'm going to say the same thing. And if you hear somebody talking about a crystal ball and it's going to happen within the time frame, I'd turn around and I would run.
Yeah.
Person.
Those guys are all over the internet. I was trying to sell you their newsletter or whatever, you know, sucking you into some hype. We know no one has a crystal ball. No one has a crystal ball. And that's what's so beautiful about it. I think that's what's beautiful about it. Although we don't know, there's players that kind of puppet master, right? I mean, we've seen some puppet mastering going on recently. Is that fair to say?
Oh, I think everything's manipulated. But going back to that question, you just sold your house and I got 500,000 in Bitcoin. And what if I did that transaction back in 2018?
Whew.
That's where my mind is thinking, yeah, I'm completely open to the idea of selling my house and utilizing this asset class that we're calling Bitcoin as the digital gold. Yeah, I'm going to take that, because in the long game.
You know, what's interesting too is what you said, Will. So we went, let's call it 5 cents to 85K, let's say today, with not much adoption. Now we have adoption. So can it go that much further? It sounds like it could.
Yeah. I mean, and that further is all the way up to, you know, whatever, 10 million, 13.
We don't know.
It's hard to, there is no, but we do feel solid. I want to summarize it and say, do we all feel solid that if you bought a crypto coin today, just a complete, you know, $88,000, you say, I pulled the plug. I bought a Bitcoin today. Just sitting on it, that could just one Bitcoin could really change your whole, wealth pattern if you were willing to sit on it for long enough. What do you think? Would a third world war tank Bitcoin and make everything obsolete and irrelevant?
No, and we've actually seen countries do this. So there was the situation with the Russian and Ukraine war. U.S. steps in and we put sanctions on Russia. Well, what did they do? They ended up using Bitcoin to go around those sanctions to still operate. And I get somebody might hear that and say, well, does that make Bitcoin bad because you can use it for all these negative reasons? No, it opens up that peer-to-peer, which is what it was designed to do, which is why I can buy a house and anybody, whether it was you, Joseph, Mike, or Jeff, now I can transact with this currency. And when you get things in the world like a World War III and you get this fear, people are going to put their money somewhere. And gold is already showing that people are willing to hedge against war or inflation and what I call these anti-fiats, which anti-fiat is like a cryptocurrency, gold or silver. And I wanted to touch on this too, because I think this really would relate to anybody new stepping into crypto, because it's like a vast sea and you can get lost really quick. But some of the things that really, and I heard you talking about it, Joseph, a couple times, is I just want to add this clarity. When you see Bitcoin at 88,000, this is what makes it very attractive. Is you don't have to put $88,000 into Bitcoin and buy one full coin. You can actually, as I was mentioning, if you set up reoccurring buys and you wanted to buy fractals of it, they call it Satoshis, you can buy $25 worth of Bitcoin. Reason why I wanted to touch on this is because I've heard people say, well, I can't afford $88,000. I can't afford $10,000 to buy a full Bitcoin. And that's where and why I'm adding to the foundation of what's going to boost Bitcoin's price. And yeah, we can talk about millions, but let's just take a step back. When it gets to $250,000, because there's these psychological levels, like 100K is a big round psychological number. And then look what happened. You got people that have been holding for a really long time. They're selling into these specific levels. But my point is this: everything is going to be tokenized. BlackRock's already said it. There's a cryptocurrency by the name of Ondo that's actually a real world asset cryptocurrency. And what they're doing is they're taking the stock market, real estate markets, and other emerging or markets that have been around for a while. They're tying it onto the blockchain. It's adding more value. Because right now you can only trade stocks Monday through Friday from certain times, whereas crypto is like a full-time 24-hour casino, really.
24/7, 365, right?
All day, every day. And then this is my point too, is what happens when NVIDIA is a good example. NVIDIA was trading at like a couple months ago, about $1,000 per share. The difference between that and crypto is if you wanted to get a share of NVIDIA, you have to buy a full share of it, which means that you have to fork out $1,000 for one share. There's no fractal. There's no, oh, can I put $20 into it?
You got to buy a share.
Exactly. And so that's limiting. And for the people at the top, they want your money. So they're going to open it up and they're going to put everything on the blockchain. And maybe 6 months, 12 months, really, we're that close to seeing, once it transitions over to the blockchain, the stock market's going to be open 24/7. Then what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to sell NVIDIA, take profit, and then you can take profit into Bitcoin seamlessly.
That's going to create a whole new universe in terms of, amount of people that are coming in the market. Let me read you this. This is something that I reached out to a man that I know from the gym, a smart businessman about my age. He's going to do an episode of another show I do called Talk to the Doctor. So he's not going to come on Crypto Posse. And he saw what we're doing on Crypto Posse, and I just thought, what do you think about what he said? This is a text I got from a friend of mine. He says, "We live in interesting times. I'm big on holding assets, especially in the present. My first question has always been, what is cryptocurrency? It is not a currency in the way banking was established and works. It survives within the confines of the giant Ponzi scheme that our economy is at present. Nothing backs it that I am aware of. I'm hoping that we tend toward a new backing like gold or energy, the petrodollar, fissile materials, or the like. The U.S. also needs to get back to producing real things. It's the only way to legitimately succeed and survive. It's reality. I don't think the crypto mentality takes us in that direction. When the chips are down, we will seek shelter, comfort, food, water, protection, and medicine. Those are basics to build on, and do it with a legal tender of real value like a gold coin or a backed currency while building it. That's the more sustainable approach. Crypto seems to just ride the Ponzi wave, not very sustainable. Just my thoughts. Have a nice day." When I read that by a man that I've talked to about a lot of different subjects, not crypto, he's always just been so intelligent. When I talked to him about electric cars, he's the single person that just blew my mind about, what it really is about. Okay. I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but I always find him to be real interesting. What do you think about, because I'm in this position where I'm hearing, people say they're different points of view, pro or con crypto. Crypto hasn't become some universal, as if, gold, I think, is considered a pretty solid thing. But then isn't there talk that, but our gold is no longer backed by anything, right? So he takes that. So anyway, I want to throw that in there and just get a little feedback on this man's perspective.
The first thing that I would ask, and I know this is off topic, talking about EVs, electric vehicles. Okay, what's one good thing about these electric vehicles? Because they're like a microwave when you drive in them, all the frequencies that mess up your body, and there's medical science to prove it. And then two, people want to say, oh, well, it's better for the environment. No, it's not, because you're now mining lithium from the earth, which is just as bad as trying to extract the oil from earth too.
What he explained to me is, and then we'll get right back to crypto. We can't go on a left turn with e-cars right now, but we'll do it just a little bit more. Is he explained to me that it's supposedly good for the environment, but it takes 3 times the energy to generate the electricity is one thing. To deliver the energy, is a whole nother, down the wires to get the energy to get the electricity to you, to pump it into the battery. Okay. Basically what he explained is it takes 3 times the amount of energy, fuel, etc. to put that car. So while it looks like it doesn't put any fumes out of the car, so the car itself isn't pushing out fumes, but the system itself is tragic for the environment. So when he said that to me, I was like, wow, I don't know a lot about all that, but I was like, I don't have an electric car. A lot of people I knew are real excited about it. They have them. They like them for whatever reason. I've heard a lot of different things, but that was his take on it, was that it's a big illusion. What are we going to do? How are we going to generate all this power that it's going to do to the grid and all this stuff? So, so anyway, being as that I respect him greatly, doesn't mean that he's Mr. Wizard about everything. I'm sure crypto with guys like that is kind of new and scary and doesn't seem backed by anything. Or what's his take on the not backed?
When you go back to a point that you made about, the petrodollar, and how at one point, wasn't it Nixon that took us off the gold standard?
I thought it was.
And so there's even talks of, why would the president, during these specific important times on TV talk about digital Fort Knox, and we're living in a digital era now. And I think that's what really is helping this conversation of cryptocurrency thrive, because talking about the legacy system, the banking cartel, however you want to break it down, that's an old system. It takes way too much energy, as you mentioned, to move money around. It takes too much time, paperwork. Why would we stay on that archaic system when everything's moving at light speed? We need something that's going to move money around light speed. And I completely understand where somebody like that is coming from. But here's some really good questions to ask. What happened to Bitcoin during COVID? Did it crash? Yes. Did it go to zero? No. Another prime example of buying into fear, because if you would have bought that dip, you would have been buying Bitcoin at about $4,500. You're winning right now. So whether it's my opinion or somebody else's opinion, the facts are is you invested into something that, I mean, dude, go back to 2012 example. You're buying into an asset class, you bring it up to this guy, and he's probably telling you, you're batshit crazy. What are you thinking?
I think also too, he's looking for an explanation of, crypto being a digital assets on a blockchain. It's newer. But today, yesterday, tomorrow, you can still take that and turn it into cash and buy gold or whatever. So it is workable. It's just newer as we get into this digital world of assets.
I just think guys like that believe it's somewhere in themselves that it could go poof. That's the core of it, I believe, is that guys like that are like, be careful, buddy. That's sounds all, they think of it as a Ponzi scheme. That's a word he used more than once. They think of it as a lot of different stuff that's not necessarily as solid as actually holding. If you buy gold, hopefully you buy the gold and you put it somewhere that it's safe. You have the gold. I think it's guys like that that feel something about tangible assets in that way. If you buy a house, you could touch the house. You could rebuild, there's something physical about it. I feel like the big fear, the big unknown for a lot of people, and I think that hopefully this show can really speak to those people, is that feeling that I think hundreds of millions of more people would come into cryptocurrency and make it that much more of an amazing thing if they could just really believe in the tangibility of it. And I think what he spoke of kind of really tapped into that spirit. And he's not an ignorant man. He is an old school man, right? He's old school in his methodologies. He's just kind of saying, what's there if it goes poof?
He's making really, really valid points, right? And I'm not here to ever say anybody's right or wrong, because everybody's entitled to their perspective.
Is it possible? All I'm saying is what he's talking about, the big poof, is it possible that we all get sucked into this, whatever he wants to call it, Ponzi that has no backing, nothing, there's nothing, you don't touch it, you have nothing. You really have nothing. I mean, do you have something when you own a crypto? When you own all this stuff and you bought all this stuff and you're walking around, do you actually have, like, if you buy shares in a company or stocks or whatever, they actually give you something? I'm just saying, like, everything could evaporate. We know that. Real estate value could evaporate, even though throughout history, we've seen it's one of the smartest things you can buy into is real estate. Do we all agree on that?
Yes.
Okay. So then gold, we seem to agree. Well, it's gold, gold is done. It's solid. It's tangible. I think the big fear or the big kind of like paranoia for the people that don't understand it, maybe even the people that do understand it, is that, what if it could just go poof? My question is, could it just go poof?
I love talking about this to these specific types of people, because what happens when you take digital fake money that's not tangible and it's just a number on a computer screen? And then the strategy, the right one to do, is actually following what he's mentioning, which is you want to take that and you want to start buying tangible assets. You want to take that Bitcoin and you want to go buy that tangible property, real estate. You could take your Bitcoin and go buy that gold. So now you're starting to diversify. So it's very wise. But to specifically answer your question, if it goes poo, we're
No,
all
no. Poof. Not
exactly.
poo.
Oh,
I thought Will said if it goes poo.
No,
That means things are getting real stinky around here, mister. But yeah, poof, just to make that clear. Sorry, you probably did say poof, but I heard poo, but that's just my little freak show. But I just want to say poof. Can it, yes or no? Just give me a yes or no. All three Crypto Posse members, well, there's 4 of us, but I'm the one asking the questions because I know the least, okay, could crypto in its, not just Bitcoin, could crypto world just all of a sudden evaporate one day and leave everyone going, and then all the naysayers would be going, told you so. And then, or would it be where it just can't do that and it's a solid thing, and one day the other side, all the crypto lovers are going, yeah, you fucked up, man, because you didn't buy any crypto and you let your fear keep you out of the market.
it's been going since the dawn of Bitcoin. What would happen if this guy asked the same question to the people that invested into Bitcoin when it was $5?
Well, we know that, but I'm talking, see, that's hindsight.
I know, but
Okay. I'm just talking about in the big picture, is it possible, whether it be a world war, who knows, a pandemic or an electric, what if we had a grid breakdown? What if the grid, like there's been a lot of talk about how we're vulnerable in the United States from a threat that's not just like people coming with, traditional warfare, that we're vulnerable with our power grid. We're vulnerable with our water supply. We're vulnerable in a lot of different ways. Okay. Recently, there's been a big talk about, all those drones that are flying over these different parts of by military bases, and they don't even know how to deal with it. So we're vulnerable in all these different ways. Is there a way that we're vulnerable for any, I'm pretty sure gold's not going anywhere. I'm just saying the value of it might be one thing, but the essential tangibility of gold or your house, but there's something just seems, at least to me, and maybe it's with these naysayers, it just seems so hard to touch crypto.
and that's why you want to buy something tangible. You want to make it real. Because at the end of the day, simply answer your question yes or no. No, it's not going anywhere. No, poof, it's not going to go anywhere. Because yes, we're talking about today. But the way I look at data is you got to look left. What's already happened? What's happened in the world that has already challenged cryptocurrency to go poo? Has it happened yet? Because we've already had wars happening in the background. Crypto's still here. You've already had the biggest example. If crypto was going to go bye-bye, why wouldn't it have happened in the biggest, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the biggest situation that happened in human history, and we label it as COVID, did crypto go poof then?
Well, I don't know if it's the biggest. That's a different discussion. If it's the biggest, I mean, the Black Plague percentage killed way more people than percentage, but whatever. I'm just saying in the modern era, right? Even the Spanish flu, I mean, whatever, that's a different discussion, but yeah, the pandemic came, COVID, the whole thing. Your question is, well, if it was going to go somewhere, it would have certainly went somewhere as a result of that.
That's my question. That would be my.
But what about a world war? We've seen regional. It's blowing up in Ukraine with Russia, and it's blowing up in Israel with Hamas and that whole thing in the Middle East. There's a lot of bubbling stuff. There's some gnarly stuff going on. But what about when it possibly just turns into a full-on third world war, which I personally see coming? I just feel like the seeds are set, that the way things are going, you could see it's possible for stuff to get that heated where it just really is getting weird. But with that, even something even bigger than we've seen, because I feel like if we could somehow wrap our head around whatever it is that makes people say what this guy said, and he's just one of the naysayers saying it's this or that, or it isn't this or that. If we could get over the hump and really just somehow truly express. But I mean, is there a way to know that it could never go poof? I don't know. It just, for me, it's always been a fear.
Here's a reality, right? You could never answer questions like that with 100% certainty. It's impossible. But what you can do is you can look at it from a probability based answer. The probability tells me that crypto isn't going to go anywhere, and it's not about like the fine detail of COVID. It's just an example of something that happened in human history that was massive, that could have obliterated any type of currency out there, but it didn't. That's my point. And then, and this is a theory, right? And I say it very lightly because I don't want to get too deep into like the whole politics, and I don't want to disturb people in their belief system. But when you talk about like the word recession, right? We've already been in one. And the only reason why people don't think that is because the powers that be changed that definition. Same thing with World War. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We've already been in one for a long time. It's called an information war. Every time you use the internet, you're going to believe everything the internet tells you? Yeah, I'm getting passionate because people are being misled, which is giving, and I appreciate somebody that wants to come to the table and ask the right questions. But let's just be honest with ourselves. We are in World War III right now. And what are you going to wait till the news tells you we're in it? You're already too late. You already missed that boat. You should have already been buying the dip. You should have already had a strategy. But the shoulda, coulda, woulda doesn't do you anything.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, the bottom line is, it sounds to me like what you're presenting is your belief that it's a tangible asset, it's a tangible commodity, it's something to absolutely invest in no matter what, whatever stage of World War we're in, whether it's this stage or the stage where there's bombs dropping on every country and the whole world is going crazy, whatever stage it is, that this isn't going anywhere, that in probability times like that, this part you didn't say, but I'll just throw a little salt and pepper, is maybe if anything, it would probably make it go off, because you can't really be traveling at a time like that. I mean, even with the pandemic, in the same way that the pandemic was good for like this technology of Zoom. I mean, before the pandemic, this was barely used. And then as a result of the pandemic, kids were being taught this way. We were communicating this way. New technologies thrived in the midst of our human circumstance. We, being the inventors that we are, figured out a way to survive and communicate, right? So with cryptocurrency, it just seems like while the people want to, a particular sector want to say, oh, it's got poof potential. It's backed by nothing. It's just you're buying a fantasy. Well, okay. But then again, the other side of it is, it could be actually the most valuable thing to have because it transcends borders, because it isn't so tangible that you only can touch it. You can actually be a mover and a shaker digitally. So, I mean, there's pro and con to any argument. I love that pro and con reality, because out of that springs hopefully truth. Hopefully, out of being open-minded enough to discuss all possibilities, something shines bright. What it sounds like to me is that what shines bright about crypto is that it's got nothing but solid potential.
I have one good question. Why?
Bring it on, mister.
I want to get real close and ask this question, right? Why is BlackRock investing into Bitcoin if it was going to go anywhere?
That's awesome. That's an awesome question, because those guys, BlackRock seems to be pretty smart. I mean, they're kicking ass, right? I mean, we may not agree with everything they're doing. They're very aggressive, right? We know they're very aggressive. Okay.
Fund in the world. And this
number one fund in the world, and they're aggressive buying crypto, or is it just Bitcoin?
Bitcoin. We've talked about in previous episodes, stable coins like USDC. Here's another good question. Why did BlackRock put about $400 million into USDC if it was going to go anywhere. And I'm not trying to
Yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah.
I love it when people come at me with this nonsense because why are all the biggest names, the biggest players investing into this? Why have they been investing into it from the beginning? Where are you getting your information from? Hopefully, not the news that stands for NEWS, North, East, West, and South. It's called a broken compass. Keeps you emotional for a reason. So that's obviously not a wise angle to be pulling information from.
Yeah, I don't know where he got his information, hold real quick, but I do think that he's someone that comes from a much more traditional approach. You know, he's just kind of more old school. You know, there's a lot of people like that. I get it. But, you know, there's a new world out there and it's a digital world. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with it. I'm a little bit on the fence myself, you know. Like here we are on a show we do on Zoom. It's a digital world we're in, you know. We have entered the matrix. But yeah, I see both sides is all I'm saying. And I want to be on the side that's going to create the possibility for me to have the property that I want to have, the trips that I want to take, the personal freedom that I want. So I don't want to miss the boat. But I'm just trying to cover that thing, that thing that's there, that why everyone hasn't jumped in crypto. There's still a sector that kind of just go, I mean, we have personal friends that just kind of look at us like, really? Wow, you know, and they're invested in stocks or real estate or different things, but they just kind of are like, oh, that just seems real sketchy. Whatever. It's just a subject that I find interesting. So, Jeff, I would ask you, what do you think about the poof potential of cryptocurrency?
Anything is possible, but do I think it's going to happen? No. I mean, there's so much money invested in it. It's getting stronger. BlackRock, everything Will said. I don't see it going anywhere. The only thing that I think is possible in good or bad times is the price. I mean, if let's say we got into a world war and it was terrible, it could go up, it could go down, but is it going to go away? I don't think so.
Okay. And Mike, what do you think about the poof potential, you know?
If you're speaking in that aspect, you're going to see some coins that probably go to zero. That's just, I mean, I don't know how many coins there are out there. There's probably, I don't know, guys, what do you guys think? 20,000 coins, 40,000? Who knows how many coins there are? There's going to be coins that go to zero, but in terms of Bitcoin, you know, I tend to agree with Jeff's view is that, you know, we're going to have fluctuations. There's going to be, you know, things that happen in the world that fluctuate the price, but I don't think Bitcoin's going anywhere.
Okay. So that makes you feel solid about, you know, when you're investing into the cryptocurrency space, the last thing you're fearing is that it would go poof. You're just trying to make money on it moving up compared to when you bought it. But you don't believe, you know, you just don't have that fear walking down the street like, oh man, God, could this stuff just go, you know, poof? Because that's the thing that I feel like I get from the people, the naysayers, the people like the guy that I read the text, you know, is they just feel that, which I think is more because they're old school. They don't understand it. It does represent something that's so volatile. And as they say, backed by nothing. Is it backed by nothing?
In a sense, it's backed by nothing, but it's I guess what it has is a community around it and a belief that it's a store of value. And
So it's perception.
it's a perception, obviously, because you know, like you said, if I buy it, I'm not holding it. I don't have gold in my hand. I don't have, you know, if I buy a stock, you know, is there a chance that if you buy a stock, the stock could go to zero, the company goes bankrupt? Yeah, there's a potential for that.
But the stock exchange itself, you know what I'm saying? There's a difference between a stock going to zero and the stock exchange itself going poof.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening. I really don't.
And you don't see anything that could make that happen. Like this is here to stay. This has no poof potential.
Not in my eyes in terms of Bitcoin, no.
Now, not specific cryptocurrencies, which we agree, any currency, just like stock, can go up or down and go to zero. But I mean the space itself.
No, because that space would include Bitcoin, so I I, I don't think it will.
It's here to stay, and we're ready to play.
Facts. And it goes back to this too, right? Don't hate it, don't date it, trade it.
Well,
I
so
look at
many
it.
times bumper stickers come out of this guy's mouth. You know what I'm saying? Like so many things Will says could become a bumper sticker or a T-shirt or a slogan. I mean, that's just awesome stuff.
But this is how I would approach it because I completely love and respect different perspectives. I love this question. Could it go poof? And we're all agreeing that no, it cannot. And there's again, there's all types of uncertainty. Nobody knows what's really going to happen here, right?
Right, but it's the poof part. The rest of it, I think we accept with anything.
And it goes to like, I like to look at things and ask these questions, right? I was really passionate moments ago, but I really try to stay grounded too, because when you're starting to, especially with investments, I feel you're already operating off of human emotion, and that's okay. But the whole don't hate it, don't date it, trade it. Okay, look at it from the perspective of like a Fortune 500 company, right? And they've got just as much fear as you. What if this happens? We don't know. Well, I'd be willing to bet because we're already seeing big companies like Tesla do it. We got MicroStrategy, which was really not doing anything until he shifted the business model, which was investing into Bitcoin. But if you could just allocate 1 to 2% of your portfolio, even with the thought process, what if it goes poof? You're only risking a small amount, which is all you need, and these big companies are doing it. But the risk versus your reward at the end of the day is so massive to take that chance on what if. I'd be willing to put 1 to 2% of my portfolio into it. What if?
Yes, if we're talking 1 to 2%, I agree with you. Which now comes to the question of personal strategies, which we're going to have to cover on another episode, which we'll keep covering. But it's like what would you feel, if you were worth $1 million, what percentage of that would you be willing to, put into play in cryptocurrency?
It comes down to, your risk management, what you're willing to risk, which is why, we're talking about super small allocations of money that you have. Taking $1 million and you're going to do 1% of a million.
10 grand.
I mean, I think that you could lose if it went poof 10 grand.
Yeah, who cares at that point? You still got 99, 998, 9,000 or whatever. I'm just saying you still got a fat chunk of cashish. But the truth is, what if you were a guy that went, no, man, I'm just 50%. I'm going to put 500 here, 300 there. I'm going to keep 200 here. I'm just saying there's different strategies. Myself, I have a premise that I work off, always have. And I don't think it'll shift too much with this. It's, you take a certain amount of what you have and you roll the dice with a certain percent. Everyone has a different number for themselves. Some people go all in, some people barely go in, some people go somewhere in between all variables, right? Some people go long, some people go short, some people do all of the above. I mean, some people put stocks and crypto and real estate and gold,
Also something that you have to think about is, you're how old you are. If you're a younger man, maybe you can be a little bit more risky with your assets. For somebody like myself, maybe you have to be a little more conservative.
All that comes to play, I would think. Yeah. Age. Yeah.
$1 million, I'm fairly risky. I'd probably throw 30% at it, and
So you'd go 30%. So you'd put out of your million, you'd put 300, whatever, 300, let's just call it 300 grand into the crypto space.
yeah, I would put it into some coins that have real world use, and then Bitcoin, pr protecting the assets.
So how much of the 300 would you put in Bitcoin?
I'd probably put
A hundy?
150.
Huh?
I'd put 100, or I'd put a 150,000.
Okay, so you'd put 50% of your 300 into Bitcoin and you'd spread the rest around into various coins.
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
my strategy.
That's
Yeah.
see, I love this kind of stuff. Like when we really get down to like personal strategy, what would you do? Now what I want to know is, Jeff, what would you do with $1 million?
Well, I definitely do close to what Mike would do. I would be the 25 to 50% guy. And, 25% of that, I would definitely want to buy some mid cap stuff to try to make a little profit and then take that profit and try to buy some Bitcoin with the profit, which would be kind of free. I earned that without spending the money, build a portfolio that way. So, yeah, that's what I would do.
So you would keep 50%. So you would probably invest 50 whatever way you would, but then you would keep 50% as, for whatever you wanted to do with it in the future. You wouldn't go all in. You wouldn't go, you'd do 50%.
Yeah, seems about right.
I like it. Well, that seems you two are very similar, I would say, right? Which brings me to the question, and I know this is just really, I can't wait to hear. Will, what would you do?
I'm risky. I do my research, and that's what leads to that risk. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to do probably somewhere in the realm of about 75 to 80% investment into the cryptocurrency space. I would leave, the rest, call it. So let's just go with 80% invested in cryptocurrencies, 20% left in what I call the cleanest dirty laundry, US dollars, just for my day-to-day living. I have a really nice nest egg of dollars to live off of. But then when you're talking about 80% into crypto, because we're talking about it in today's day and age, I would go out of that 80%, I'd go probably 25% into Bitcoin and the rest into altcoins. That's why I'm taking a bigger risk. But the ultimate goal is to turn the altcoin gains that I will be making into more Bitcoin. And that's how my strategy is overall, I want more Bitcoin, but I'm going to use the altcoins to get that done.
Okay. Well, doesn't that sound interesting? I mean, that's definitely a whole different approach. I like, you're basically categorizing yourself as a, much more risky, much more willing to, not say all in, but pretty much all in, go big. There's a surfer, is it Johnny Boy Gomes? It says, go big or go home, or was that what he said, Mike? Do you remember?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, what someone's.
I think he said beat it, cuz.
Okay, well, with
And
that
then
said,
he dropped in at back door,
yeah, go big or go home is something that just really makes a lot of sense. And today's show, really cool. I really like what we talked about today, and I hope you guys do too out there in crypto land, because this is Crypto Posse. So Posse, thanks for showing up. Can't wait to see you for the next episode, and peace out.